Yo, what up? My name's Braden, and welcome to Music Philosophy, the show where I dive deep into all sorts of musical questions. This week, the question is simple. Do you hear what I hear? That is, do we both hear music in the same way? Let's get into it.
Music Philosophy.
The sensations you're feeling right now, the sight of my face, the sound of my voice, your weight pressing you into your chair, those sensations are nothing more than your brain's interpretation of electrical signals. Your brain does not receive the real information, the light entering your eye, the sound waves entering your ears. Your eyes and ears convert that information into electrical signals, which your brain then has to decode in order to recreate reality. But does every brain recreate reality the same way? If you and I both listen to a song, will our internal experiences be the same? This is a really difficult question to answer because I can give you lots of descriptions about how a piece of music sounds to me. Happy, sad, light, dark. But you can never experience the exact thing I perceived. You can never be me, and I can never be you. So the reality is we can't really know what's going on inside an individual's brain. Consciousness is too magical, for lack of a better word. But what we can do is examine the real world. Let's talk about a bunch of real, measurable things that might point to our conscious experiences being different. The brain somehow has to accurately transform a series of electrical signals from your ears into a conscious replication of reality. It's learned how to do this from two resources, instinct and practice. Instinct is your innate ability to hear, gathered from millions of years of evolution. It's obviously advantageous to be able to hear potential threats around you. That's why a vast majority of species have some form of hearing. But the rest of your ability, especially your understanding of music, comes from practice. All the years of your life you've spent listening to all the things around you. What that means is the musical patterns you learn to pick up are dependent on the musical patterns you're exposed to, especially during the early years of your life. Here in the West, we've divided the octave into 12 equally spaced notes, and we primarily structure songs using sequences of chords, using tonality to drive interest. But we often forget that our Western system is not the only system of music used around the world. If we look at India, for example, things are completely different. In traditional Indian music, the octave is split into 22 notes, and actually as many as 84 in older styles. Instead of using tonality, this style of music is much more drone-based, focusing interest on melody and rhythm. So the people who grow up around this system of music have their brains programmed just slightly differently than those of us who grow up in the Western system. They expect slightly different patterns than the ones we expect. And all that means is when we listen to the same piece of music, we're comparing that to a different set of expectations, and so we'll likely perceive it slightly differently. Let's step away from the brain for a second. Sound is made of real, physical vibrations in the air, and so we need something physical to create them. Speakers. And they're not all created equal. A speaker has what we call a frequency response, and it usually looks something like this. On this specific speaker, frequencies around 1000 Hz will be played louder than those around 3000 Hz. This is due to all sorts of factors: manufacturing quality, size of the speaker, subtle imperfections, etc. And it's unique for every single speaker. If you listen on a tiny cell phone speaker, you're listening through a response like this, which is really not very good. For starters, you're essentially cutting off everything below 400 Hz, which is really a lot. You're losing the kick drum, bass guitar, and the lower half of anything else. But if you listen in your friend's decked out car with 4 13-inch subwoofers, you're gonna get something that places way too much emphasis on the lower bass frequencies. Ideally, we would want a perfectly flat response, so that the sound wave that leaves the speaker is identical to the recording. But this is difficult to achieve. That's why nice studio monitors can be so expensive. It takes really precise engineering to even get close to a flat response. But no speaker is ever perfect, meaning every speaker leaves a unique thumbprint on the audio it plays. So if you and I listen to the same song, but through different speakers, we're each going to get a different, altered version of that recording. To add on to that, once the sound wave leaves the speaker, it doesn't just flow nicely into your ears. It spreads everywhere, and it bounces off walls. If you're listening loudly in a small room, you don't just get the sound from the speaker. You get a reflection off the side wall a millisecond later, and a reflection off the back wall another millisecond later. These misaligned waves combine and interfere with one another as they enter your ear canal, and they change the message your brain ends up receiving. Your room is an echo chamber full of bouncing waves affecting one another. That gives your room its own frequency response that changes based on where you're standing in it. And you can try this at home. Turn on some music, louder speakers work better, and walk around. If you listen really carefully, you can hear how the color of the music changes subtly. The physical conditions where we listen to music directly impacts the message our brain receives. So unless you're in the same room, in the same place, listening through the same speakers, no, you don't hear what I hear. We don't even get the same message. But okay, let's just assume you and I were born in the same place, we grew up listening to similar music, and we both listen to something in the exact same conditions. Would there still be differences in our perception? Well, listen to this. If you happen to have perfect pitch, you heard that note as an E, because it was. If you've worked on your relative pitch, you may have heard that as a major third. The background music in this video just a second ago was in the key of C, and so you may have held on to that tonality and used it for comparison. Otherwise, that tone had no significance to you at all. It was just a tone. What we have here are three perceptions of just a single note. The note was the same for all, and yet people with different backgrounds heard it different ways. Our own past knowledge and experiences define our approach, and approach dramatically affects perception. Here, I'll show you. Let's go to the piano. Okay, so I'm going to keep things simple in this example. In my left hand, I'm only going to alternate between two chords, A minor and F major. In my right hand, I'm going to play a really simple melody that I'm just going to repeat over and over again. So together, it sounds something like this. Now what I want you to notice here is how the A minor feels like home, and the F feels like a deviation, like we've left home, and then we return, and then we leave, and then we come back. I'm not going to change those notes at all, but I am going to approach them in a different direction. Check it out. See what happened? Now F is our home, and A minor is our deviation, and then we return. The notes never changed. I played the exact same thing, but with a different approach, we heard it a different way. And that's the thing, we all live unique lives. We come at the same piece of music with the history of a different life. If our approach affects the way we hear music, and we all come from different directions, then you're probably not going to hear what I hear. You're not me. And that's beautiful, because if we all heard the same thing, we would all like the same songs and genres, and there'd be much less diversity in music. It's because of our differences in perception that allows the spectrum of music to be so wide. But here's the contradiction. Somehow, every year, there are enormous hits, songs that 1 billion people all unanimously agree are great. And unlike what people might tell you, these songs are not all the same. Go back and listen to all the #1 songs from the past 10 years. There's actually a surprising amount of variety. It's not as if somebody just cracked the code of what people like and they just keep reproducing that. The thing people like changes constantly. If everybody comes from a unique background and hears music a unique way, what is it about these mega hits that makes them so unanimously popular? And I'm going to leave you on that question. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Music Philosophy. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. I make a video like this every week and you're not going to want to miss the next one. By the way, if you click the little bell next to the subscribe button and set it to all, that'll make sure you actually get notified when I upload. Due to the small size of this channel, I kind of suspect these videos don't get pushed to feeds, but I don't have any way to know. So if you're subscribed, let me know in the comments down below if you do actually see these in your feeds, because I'm interested in knowing. Anyway, you can click here to watch the previous episode or here to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.